This week on the show, HellRaisers win the PGL minor, Mongols upset Renegades in Taipei, and G2 signs the ex-Titan roster. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Corey, Megaman Gilbert, and let's kick things off with a 1.6 frag clip. This week's clip is Sweden versus Ukraine at the 2010 European Nations Championship, where Forest picks up an ace in the deciding map. Sweden would win the match and the tournament after beating Ukraine for a second time in the grand final. Our first story this week is the PGL European Minor, which took place over the weekend of January 29th to 31st in Bucharest, Romania. Now, Megaman, this was a $50,000 tournament, $30,000 to the first place team, but of course, more importantly than that, it grants the winning team a spot at the main qualifier for MLG Columbus, which takes place a little later in 2016. So, let's get Group A up on the screen to begin with. So this is the group with E-Frag, Penta, CG and LDLC White, and I think it's fair to say straight off the bat that E-Frag kind of dominated this group. They finished top. It was a comfortable win. They beat the second place team Penta 16-3 and 16-7 in that kind of that best of three I think they played. So kind of run us through this group a little bit, Corey. How did you see this going? Is this the dominant performance you expected from E-Frag?
This is pretty much exactly what I figured was going to happen in Group A. E-Frag has found success in the past. 2015 was actually not too terrible of a year for them. They had a number of different tournaments that they placed pretty well in, regardless of the stature of the tournament. They got third at the ESEA Predator Masters, losing to HellRaisers in that tournament. Ended up winning $7,000 on that one. So a number of different tournaments. This was actually their biggest tournament prize pool that they had actually won so far in their stretch as a CSGO team. So I would say that probably Group A ended the way that it was, on paper looking to be. Now E-Frag obviously a little bit more dominant in that performance against Penta than was probably expected. Would have figured that BO3 would have been a little closer. Matches maybe a 2-0 for E-Frag, but a little bit closer on the score. 16-3, 16-7. I mean, those are, you said it right, dominant performance.
All right, and we should also talk about the two other teams in this group. I mean, we associate Swedes and Frenchmen with being phenomenal at CSGO, but CG and LDLC White just couldn't seem to get through in this group. LDLC lost both of their games. CG only got one map off Penta, I believe, but in the end it wasn't enough. Is this just not a good tournament for these two teams, or are they not ready for this caliber of play, do you think?
Well, I would say I was actually a little bit disappointed with LDLC White. They have found success at some of the smaller leagues, smaller tournaments and stuff that they have played in.
Yeah.
Weren't able to get it together in this tournament. And actually, adversely, I know we're talking about Group A, but Group B, again, the two Swedish teams that were over there are also out in groups. So not a very good showing from the lower tier Swedish teams or LDLC White in this matter. But, probably see them bounce back from this and start to pick up the pace again, because LDLC White, like I said, they've had success in some of the other avenues that they have gone through at least last year. So definitely see them doing better in the future. But this was a little bit of a disappointing event for those two teams.
Absolutely. All right, well, you mentioned Group B, so let's jump over and talk about that a little bit. This was the group with the two European teams, the two Swedish teams, HellRaisers, PixelFire, Den D, or Den Double D, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, Lemon Dogs. And the first thing we should talk about here is that marathon game between PixelFire and Den D. So that was, 41-38 on Mirage and 16-5 on Train. I mean, hell of a Counter-Strike match. I know you've done some research on the longest matches prior to that.
Yeah.
But just walk us through that game. Surely that's a hell of a loss for the Swedish roster, right?
Man, whichever team came out on the losing end of that, that's just a complete punch to the morale. I mean, that's just it's really, really rough. It's not very often that you actually get to see a match where the top fragger in the server gets 82 kills.
Yep.
I mean, that's an absolutely ridiculous performance. I mean, Dead Fox ended up plus 24 at the end of that matchup, and I believe he's the AWPer for PixelFire. And all of the comments that I had read about this matchup, even watching it live, Dead Fox was an absolute monster, and PixelFire looked really, really good. Den DD again, they looked great on Mirage. They just couldn't get it done. And one of the things that a lot of people have commented on was the fact that, they had the advantage in this map. They had, they were looking really, really good going through in the beginning of this, and then PixelFire brought it back, and then it's just this brawl back and forth through overtime, back and forth and back and forth. And Dead Fox and Barbar from PixelFire were very, very impressive in this tournament, and they did a sensational job. Plus 18 for Barbar on that match as well, and just really, really crazy stuff. 100 rounds played in that BO3. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's a hell of a stat. The other thing we should talk about, the last thing we should talk about for Group B is HellRaisers. They won the whole group, and they're probably the best-known team in the group, maybe the whole tournament. Did they play like they were the best-known team at this event?
Yeah, I mean, at least in groups they did. Eventually they ended up going to win the whole thing. So obviously they, stayed true to their name. The other team that I would probably put up there with, notoriety between HellRaisers would have been Penta. E-Frag, again, has a little bit of notoriety behind them, but HellRaisers was definitely probably the favorites to end up taking this whole tournament. So seeing them 2-0 in the groups, pretty much standard, and then seeing them move on to the brackets and do well there as well was pretty much what we expected to see out of HellRaisers, especially with the way that that Oscar and Sticko and those guys have been playing recently.
All right, well, last but not least, before we leave this topic, let's go and have a look at the bracket graphic up on screen now. So, yes, as you've alluded to, HellRaisers did go through the whole thing and win out. They beat Penta 2-1 and then E-Frag 2-1 in the grand final. They are, of course, the only team to qualify for the major qualifier out of this event. In your eyes, were any of the other teams worthy of potentially winning a spot at the major here?
I would have definitely put E-Frag up there. I think that they had themselves a hell of a tournament. Again, you can look at the way that everything unfolded. I mean, they ended up going 2-1 against PixelFire in the bracket, or in the group in the bracket stage, yeah. And then losing 2-1 to HellRaisers, the eventual champions of it. So they put up a fight against them as well. Granted, the maps were a little bit topsy-turvy when it went into the grand finals. I think it was like 16-11 on the first map, 16-6, and then 16-6 the other way. So it was a little bit different when you look at the way that the finals unraveled. Obviously, pretty strong showing on some of these maps, but it was good. And I think E-Frag can definitely compete. I would like to see more of them, being that they are a lesser-known team. A lot of people were kind of shocked that they were able to do as well as they did, but they have found success in the past, like I talked about before. But HellRaisers were definitely the favorites. And if you look at the statistics for the grand finals, again, I mentioned Sticko and Oscar stepping up during this tournament. They were actually plus 17 and plus 16 individually in the grand finals. So definitely carrying a brunt to the work. 61 and 44 for Sticko in the finals. Very, very strong performance from him. But adversely, on the other side, E-Frag actually had the top fragger in that series, and that was Bubble. So again, on both sides of the spectrum, they had players that stepped up in a big way, and definitely shows that E-Frag has potential to compete with some of these other teams. It's just that they weren't able to seal the deal and get it done in the long run.
All right, well, let's leave that there. That was the PGL European Minor, which took place in Bucharest, Romania. Congratulations once again to HellRaisers, who won. And before we move over to topic number 2, let's check in with Miss Harvey to see what CS fact she's got for us this week.
Thanks, Jack. When Counter-Strike was first released in 1999, there were only 4 official maps: Siege, Mansion, Weapons Depot, and Prison. Since then, many more have been added to the game. The oldest map that still exists today is CS Assault. It was first released in Beta 1.1 and has been used in every version of Counter-Strike except Condition Zero. The oldest map to be used in every CS game is Militia. That was also designed back in 1999, released in the 3rd beta, and has been used in every version of the game since. So if you feel like running through some of the oldest corridors in Counter-Strike, load up Assault or Militia and remind yourself what the game used to be like 17 years ago.
Thank you very much, Steph. Corey, are you a Assault fan, a Militia fan at all?
Absolutely, man. That's where the old pub roots come from back in the 1.5 days. The old school days, even before then, it was always fun to play those, being a CT or camping on the roof on Assault or picking up the AWP on militia and up and on the outside courtyard and making people mad when they would run out of terrorist spawn. So always fun.
Yeah, really pissing people off. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, of course. The old pub trolling.
All right, well, our second story this week is IEM Taipei, which took place understandably in Taipei, Taiwan. This was the Asian minor for MLG Columbus and took place from January 29th to February 1st. Once again, $30,000 up for the first place prize, but 2 spots at the Columbus main LAN qualifier instead of just the one this time around. So we've got Group A on screen. This was the group with CyberZen, Chiefs, Risky, and MVP Carnal. And CyberZen and Chiefs were the 2 teams to advance from this group. Now, CyberZen really made their mark on this group, I think it's fair to say, Mega Man. They beat Risky 16-10, Chiefs 16-4. Now, I don't know too much about any of these teams other than the fact that Chiefs is kind of that second place team in Australia. So how much can you tell us about this group?
My knowledge on them is pretty limited myself, but I can say that CyberZen was the favorites to actually win the group. They've found success in the past as well. Chiefs, it's my understanding that they actually played this tournament with stand-ins, which was actually quite impressive that they went as far as they did and had such success.
Yeah.
Because they weren't playing with their regular starting 5, which is a testament to the players and also the stand-ins that they had. One player to note, Top Gun, was very impressive in this tournament. And I know that the fellows on Renegades, the old chaps on Renegades, were very, very proud of the way that Chiefs had performed in this tournament, which was really nice to see the camaraderie between the teams from the same region. So really, really nice to see that. But CyberZen was definitely probably the top pick to do well in Group A and make it out of the group play in the top spot. So pretty much, again, just like at the Bucharest PGL tournament, this group went pretty much according to plan. No real surprises there. The only thing that I would say is maybe CyberZen's win 16-4 over Chiefs was a little bit of a surprise, being that it was so one-sided. But again, I think that this pretty much went to code.
Yeah, absolutely. And Top Gun, just on that point, he's a long-time CS player, right? I remember him playing for Sydney Underground back in the CGS days, which was 2007 or so, right? So,
yeah,
long-time CS player. All right,
and somebody who people would pick to play on their rugby team, I believe.
Oh, yeah, certainly a big enough guy, yeah.
Yes, he is.
The other question I have, just while we're on Group A or this whole tournament in general, having watched it, what do you think the overall level of play was? Because it's been a while since we really kind of dipped into the Asian scene and saw what those guys were capable of in CSGO.
It was great. This whole tournament was really eye-opening to a lot of people who hadn't really seen Eastern Counter-Strike in a very, very long time. You know, back all the way into the days of, familiar name, Tyloo, as well as like your Lunatic High, way back when in the 1.6 days, very, very successful team in 1.6. And we haven't really had that Asian presence in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. So it was really, really great to see these teams competing. And, the whole hashtag CSGO to Asia has kind of started to come to fruition, which is a really, really awesome thing to see, because we want this to be, it's called Global Offensive for a reason. We want it to be global. And to start seeing these teams actually be able to compete over here in Asia is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely, completely agreed. And, well, you mentioned Renegades and Tyloo there, so let's jump over and take a look at Group B. This was the group, of course, with Mongols, Renegades, Tyloo, and Eats You Alive, which is a team name I definitely like. So this group, Renegades, I guess, was probably the favourite for most people here, right? They're the Australian team. They've played in majors before. Everyone's very familiar with them. But they came straight out of the gate and lost to Mongols in their first match against them, 16-13, which was, of course, a sign of things to come. Again, run us through this group. What can you tell us about any of these rosters here?
Well, there's 2 big mixed feelings in this group. There's the joy of seeing a team like the Mongols come out of nowhere and have an absolutely great tournament. And then there's also the disappointment from the side of Renegades and Tyloo. Tyloo being kind of what took the story of the first day of that group, being that they were disqualified for having a player on their team that had a previous VAC ban on their record, which is very, very disappointing to see, because Tyloo, again, like we talked about previously, was one of those teams from back in the day that has a lot of there's a lot of accomplishment associated with that name, and to see them go down in groups not even with a loss to any of the teams, to go out in groups by reason of disqualification was really, really shocking and really disappointing to see. But then you talk about Renegades losing 16-13 to Mongols, again, a team that nobody really knew too terribly much about going into this tournament. That's a great win for Mongols, and that is a devastating loss for Renegades. I mean, it was close, yes, but Renegades is supposed to be this team that's supposed to come in and just completely mop up, qualify for the major qualifier, and be good to go. And there's this brick wall called the Mongols in front of them, and there wasn't anything that they could do to get past this team. And it was fantastic to see if you're a fan of up-and-coming teams, because this was a great opportunity to see that.
Okay, well, that was CyberZen, Chiefs, and Mongols and Renegades who advanced from Group A and Group B. So if we jump over now to have a look at the brackets, the matchups in the first round were Chiefs, Mongols, CyberZen, and Renegades. Renegades advance, Mongols advance, and then, of course, Mongols got the win in the grand final. And much like the first game those two teams played, it was kind of a blowout. I mean, Renegades lost 16-9 and then 16-2 on the second map. Renegades have been known for losing their cool in the past. Do you think at any point in this game they kind of mentally checked out and there was that kind of internal strife we've seen at previous tournaments?
Well, that's the thing. Renegades they've been vocal in the past, and they've been known to tilt. And that's pretty much what happened in this matchup.
Right.
You can't really make too much of an argument. They were never really in it, and it's really, really tough for a team. We saw it with that big overtime in the past where it's really hard to recover from that. And case in point in this one, they lost to Mongols in the groups, and then they get 2-0'd by that same team in the grand finals. And it's just really, really difficult to keep the hype up with Renegades, because you see them tilt and then it's just a wash from there, and it's tough. But let's not take anything away from Mongols either. And watching those matches, the crazy thing about it was there wasn't really anything absurdly special about the way that Mongols played. They just out-aimed Renegades pretty much everywhere the entirety of the time. And that finals series actually ended up with the top 4. Yeah, I said top 4 players on Mongols. Not all 5 of them. Sadly, NCL was a little bit behind. But from first to fourth, as far as the frag distribution was concerned, 5 kills separated the 4 players on Mongols. That's impressive. That's really impressive that they were all that close in such a dominating performance. So it wasn't just like one person went off. The whole team went off. And one person to talk about, I know that that these guys were hyping him up at the LAN and everything like that, but Machine Gun, what a tournament from this guy. He was an absolute monster the entire tournament. But that's not to take anything away from anybody else. Zilkenberg had a fantastic tournament as well. Sugu was very, very consistent as well. And these guys, they just came in and they're like, hey, we're here. Let's do this. And they end up walking away $30,000 richer and with a spot at the MLG qualifier. It's fantastic. I love seeing stuff like this. It's a great story. It's a great story.
Last but not least, I've got some quickfire questions for you, Mega Man. So, quick as you can, walk me through the following news stories from the week. First of all, G2 have signed the ex-Titan roster.
This is great. I love this because, obviously those players needed a place to go. G2 has got a lot of kind of fame behind them now with the previous roster that they had. And it's really, really great seeing these guys because they're good people, and good people deserve an opportunity. So they get a great chance to continue to compete with G2. They're going to be able to go to a lot of tournaments with the financial backing of G2 and everything like that. So really, really good for them, really good for the scene to be able to keep these players alive and fighting.
That's it for this week. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Corey Mega Man Gilbert.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of PopFlash.